Well, this is the latest version of what has previously been guidelines about corporate governance. We've turned that into the QCA code. It's the corporate governance code for small and mid-sized quoted companies. And the subtitle to it is Delivering Growth. And I think that sends a very strong message that corporate governance isn't just something that you go through and tick a whole load of, a checklist, a whole load of boxes to tick. It's about actually creating structures and behaviours which drive the implementation of your strategy. It's all about creating long-term growth for your shareholders. This is not about process really, it's all about trying to create the right environment where boards can act as teams, the chairman can take a lead in terms of ensuring that there's effective process so that companies can deliver what they set out to deliver, which is growth, delivering their strategy. So it's the downside sometimes comes through, oh yeah, corporate governance is just a whole load of costs. But we firmly believe that corporate governance lowers the cost of capital, so that it builds trust between companies and their shareholders, so that when they come to raise finance, that trust enables them to have a quality dialogue and enables them to raise finance more effectively. Well, it's about managing effective teams, I think, and the role of the non-executive director is very different from the role of the executive director. So we've adopted a very pragmatic approach. We've got 12 principles which we expect companies would be following if they were complying or explaining about how they're going about corporate governance effectively. And those 12 principles allow non-executive directors and executive directors to be clearer about their roles, but also to tease out the issues, to make sure that the strategy that they develop is one which is effective, and that every single member of that board can articulate that strategy, so that when it comes to communicating with shareholders and other stakeholders, there's an absolute clarity of purpose amongst the team, the board team. I think corporate governance in the small and the mid-sized quoted community, if I put it kindly, it's developing. I think you can see very, very good examples of companies which do it well, and there are examples of companies that do it less well. What we're aiming to do over the next year is to review that corporate governance behaviour. We're going to be working with a firm of accountants to review the disclosure that comes from the annual reports of a sample of companies, and also their websites, to see how they're articulating their strategy, how they're going about explaining why corporate governance is an essential part of what they do. And we believe that that over time will help to drive changes in behaviour. And we also expect the different marketplaces to start requiring companies to state which corporate governance code they aim to follow, so that we can see that there's a standard of behaviour that's being driven there as well. It's difficult to answer because every company is in a unique position, so that it's for them to determine the appropriate structure which helps drive their strategy, which they believe engenders confidence amongst their shareholders. We do say that we don't expect the role of chairman and chief executive to be conducted by the same person. There should be a division of responsibilities so that there are checks and balances, so that the non-execs, the chairman and the non-exec team can challenge the executive team, and do that so that there's some creative tension that happens between the two different types of director. When it comes down to sort of effective teams and the perfect board, it's always, I think, about creating the right balance between independent non-executive directors and executive directors. So if you get that right, then you're well on the way to creating a good team. Our corporate governance code, the QCA code, was developed by our corporate governance expert group, which is populated by people from fund managers, the companies, the quoted companies, accountants, lawyers, registrars and the like. And that means that it was developed by the community. In doing that, it means that we've got a consensus which has been built up about what people believe is a pragmatic and practical best practice. In terms of rolling this out, we launched it recently at the London Stock Exchange. Marcus Stuttard, the head of AIM, was there for the launch, and also Stephen Hadrell, the Chief Executive of the Financial Reporting Council, was there to endorse and support the launch of the code. We've had tremendous support from from a wide variety of people on this. And we're selling the guide as in hard copy and PDF form, and the uptake of that has been absolutely amazing. So there's a huge interest in this, and particularly from the advisory firms, from the nomads, the accountants, and particularly the lawyers who are there to advise on best practice when it comes to corporate governance. In doing all of those things, I think what it's doing is getting the message out that this is something that really needs to be taken seriously. It's early days yet, but I think as the message that good corporate governance lowers the cost of capital, so you will see companies changing their behaviour. Anecdotally, I'm hearing from finance directors and CEOs in particular that this is a subject which is not going to go away, and it's a subject which they are beginning to say, well, okay, we won't just tick the boxes, we're going to say what suits us. And we would hope that in many cases that corporate governance becomes a test of whether companies are operating in the most effective way. We would hope in some cases that companies would say we're not complying with a particular principle because actually for our company there is a better way of doing that. So we want companies to make their own minds up because one size does not fit all. Well, certainly in terms of the comparison of behaviour between UK companies and other countries, perhaps Europe is the best comparison. Across Europe, we have helped to develop a European-wide corporate governance set of principles, but we do believe that as a basis, the UK corporate governance code, our code and the UK code, are seen to be best practice right across Europe. So a lot of the work that's been done by the European Commission on corporate governance is actually catching up with where we are in the UK because we started this many years ago. Our code is available on our website, and also you will find that many of the firms of lawyers are doing synopsis and summaries of the code and explaining how best to put it into practice.